Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, the Executive Secretary of Tetfund, we sincerely thank you for sparing our time to talk to us here on Control TV. What impact would you say Tetfund has had on universities, polytechnics, and federal colleges of education in Nigeria today?
Thank you, Gimba. Well, I call them 6-point agenda, so to say. And we had the creation of a Department of R&D and Centers of Excellence in Tetfund was the topmost on my mind. And of course, other things, of course, we did. The Board of Trustees approved the creation of Department of R&D, Research and Development and Centers of Excellence. And we had improving on advantage of using ICT as facilitator for both the operations of the organization, but more importantly, for facilitation of teaching, learning, and research in our beneficiaries' tertiary institutions. In this case, the public universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. And yes, we also had the issue of looking at conditions of service of the organization. Of course, there are persons that have been employed to manage the operations, the funds, because we are managing funds anyway, so it's a trust fund. And you need to be sure that the personnel were given conducive environment to operate in. And at the time I came in 2014, there were no conditions of service, as it were, exclusive for Tetfund. I made sure we pushed that case. The Board of Trustees approved recently of the head of service. And I'm happy to say in 2019, when I was reinstated, we got the formal approval. And Tetfund today, we have our staff operating under new approved conditions of service, as well of a scheme of service that was just about 1.5 years ago. We got approval for a scheme of service peculiar to Tetfund. I'm happy about that. The other thing I prioritized was, I realized that Tetfund, we are relating with, the staff are relating with the most educated constituency in Nigeria, universities, polytechnics, college of education. And so if you were inadequately prepared, you could not relate at parallel level or anything near it with the professors, the vice chancellors, the rectors, the provosts, that much higher qualification, more experience and all that. So I made a case, and the board approved that we encourage staff to go for higher qualification so that they will move their confidence level to a relevant level that gives them the opportunity to be able to tap from the deeper knowledge of the professors, etc., in the tertiary institutions. And of course, a number of things, but I'll tell you a key area associated with the creation of Department of R&D. Well, I know that we also had to create the Department of Public Affairs, independent from the Office of the Executive Secretary as a full department. Those were some of the things, about the 6 of them. And but I'll tell you, easily the most passionate, as far as I'm concerned, is the creation of the R&D Centers of Excellence Department. And it took off, but after me, it was tinkered with, even the name of the department. And as soon as I was reinstated in 2019, I also reinstated the original name, so to say. And so we went back to the Department of Research and Development and Centers of Excellence. And it was supposed to be very, very important going forward. I could delve into that. I know I would be glad to even take more time going into the details of what we've done. Today, I can tell you, if you're talking about Tetfund, for years, people were looking up to seeing Tetfund intervention reflect in the physical transformation of the beneficiary institutions. Are you talking about the laboratories, the libraries, the classrooms, the offices, until Tetfund started intervening in our public tertiary institutions. There were hardly professorial offices. Today, we have professorial offices in most of our beneficiary institutions. And I just feel good about that, I can tell you. I'm glad to know, of course, I'm aware that you've gone around the country and you've just spoken about this Northwest zone. But I know that you've gone around the country and of course you'll be speaking to the issues. For me at Tetfund, I'm glad that we have independent evaluators going out to engage the institutions without we being there dictating things to you. You engage them. We did not select for you who to go and what do you call it, engage, interview, and get. And at the end of it, you have your opinion. But talking about impact, I will tell you that that is very central to my expectation. That whatever we're doing, we're managing funds. We're an intervention agency. Yes, people have made commendations for most of the time from the ETF days, like you rightly said. It's been, Tetfund today is been in continuous evolution. It started as ETF and between 93 and 2011. It was Education Trust Fund, but now it's Tertiary Education Trust Fund, emphasizing the fact that the focus is exclusively, as it were now, on our public tertiary institutions, the universities, polytechnics, colleges of education, owned by federal and state governments. Before ETF came into being, I love to recall when the academic staff, universities went on strike to make a case for improved funding, massive improved funding. Incidentally, it turned out to be one strike action after another. The issue have almost always been around inadequate funding. And so the ETF was supposed to address that. And I recall when ASU had described how tertiary institutions, universities in particular, as glorified secondary school, it was supposed to be unacceptable. Nobody would wish that for themselves, as it were. And so the first reference about university being glorified secondary school was that if you went to the fiscal environment in those institutions, you hardly saw something that reminds you that you are in a university, not in a secondary school. That was about the truth. If infrastructure existed, they were in decrepit conditions, unacceptable. If at all they existed, they were inadequate in numbers and of poor quality. And so I can tell you from 1993, when ETF came into being by law, the intervention emphasized ensuring that there is physical presence of the intervention. So it was mainly physical infrastructure. Those things that would make you, if you came into a place, oh, no, at least we can see something that looks like a tertiary institution. Yes, it continued. And there is no doubt about it that when we were celebrating 10 years of Tetfund last year, we made it very clear that for some years at the takeoff of ETF, the emphasis was fiscal infrastructure presence of quality to give respectability to our public tertiary institutions. But that so much had been done and that there is glaring manifest changes, physical transformation. But there's just no doubt about it. Even a cynic would concede that Tetfund's presence is making massive difference. You go out there, only a few days ago, was it about 8 days ago, I was at the Kogi State University, Aigba, and we commissioned project. I assisted His Excellency the Governor to commission projects, and at that university. And it is very obvious. The Governor is appreciating, as it were. The heads of institutions across the country are appreciating it. And at the end of it, the question has always been, but for Tetfund. And so that, to me, is an evidence of impact in the context of the fiscal infrastructure. But for me, as an academic, a professor, and a researcher, I am eager to know to what extent have the interventions over the years transformed to assist in the ranking and placement or rating of these institutions. And so I am happy to share this with you to say there is no doubt about it that about 8 to 10 years ago, believe me, there was no Nigerian university in the top 2,000 universities in the world by ranking. And largely as a result of massive Tetfund intervention, from the fiscal infrastructure to now the academic staff training and development, getting more persons to acquire PhDs in particular. And now we've introduced postdoc. These are factors. If you talk about ranking of universities globally, there are many criteria, but I'll tell you of the many, 2 are outstanding. 1, quality of faculty. In other words, the quality of the lecturers. And secondly, quality and effectiveness of research infrastructure. These are 2 important things. And that is why my R&D drive, it was a visionary idea to catch up with the rest of the world, that we must emphasize the right thing, that the rest of the world is taking very important the issue of quality of faculty. That's why they're investing on faculty members, lecturers, at the early research career level to advanced senior professorial level, and the level at which you qualify to be a visiting professor, exchanging ideas with other universities across the world and bringing back the idea of Polytechnics, as it were. And this has been very, very clear. So I'm happy to inform you that in about 2015, 2016, Nigerian universities started appearing at the first 1,000. And it has improved, both public and private universities. At least 2 universities, I think, might have been in the first 500 in the world. The University of Ibadan appeared in the first 400 to 500 in the world, October 2020. And this is something, and I want to say it, the Vice Chancellor broke the news. They just got the news that very week I had visited. And he turned to me and said, we want to acknowledge the role of Tetfund that has assisted in the improved ranking of this university. And we are the best university in Nigeria, and the top 400 to 500 in the world we are celebrating. For instance, the Bogoro University, Kano, where we have one of the 2 centers of excellence of Tetfund. You are aware, you must have seen, the Tetfund Center of Excellence in Renewable Energy. In the Northwest. The second one, we picked the first, second generation universities to do that. And the second one is Tetfund Center of Excellence at Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto, in nephrology and urology. That's right. So that's medicine, and this one is renewable energy, science and tech, as it were. And let's get it clear. For instance, the Bogoro University that I was talking about. Yes, Tetfund, the Bogoro University established Center for Renewable Energy quite some years back. So our deciding to put money and make it a center of excellence was supposed to reflect our taking that center as very relevant. Universities become irrelevant if they are not addressing the needs of immediate community, regional community, as it were, continental, and even global. You will agree with me that renewable energy, one of the things that comes under renewable energy, of course, we have solar, we have wind, we have water, technologies, all imagine in the context of renewable energy. Of course, we can go on the other aspects of renewable energy, but even just those 3. Talking about solar, you agree with me that it makes sense that a center of excellence were picked in a part of the country that has more sunshine on a daily basis. than, for instance, the other side of the country. And that was very, very important. And it's the same thing with wind energy, as you would appreciate. And so the priorities at that center, incidentally, it happens that the former ASU president, Professor Fage, is the director of that center. And believe me, we are very excited about his focus and his commitment. And so just to pick one example, yes, Bayero University is also managing African Center of Excellence. In fact, two of them. There's one on dry land agriculture. And that speaks to the technology that should be relevant to the community. Yes. So it's not just any agriculture, dry land agriculture. You are looking at the rainfall frequency or otherwise. And how does the scientist come in? The breeder comes in, the soil scientist comes in the context of crop. If it is a livestock, you are looking at what type of breeds are relevant. Are you crossing, or you are dealing with indigenous pure breeds that you improve the environment through nutrition and housing, etc., etc. So the challenges of science, technology, engineering, STEM, as we call it, are outright very, very clear. And I can tell you, majority of the centers of excellence were largely in STEM areas. Although we have the Center of Excellence on Leadership and Governance at the Abuja University here in Abuja. And then we also have, I think, let me see this other one. Okay, on multidisciplinary research at the University of Ibadan. So we looked at it, but out of the 12, 2 were outside, but the majority, I can tell you, were largely in STEM. And there's one on computational intelligence at the University of Uyo, and so on and so forth. So, of course, you go to, you saw what you did in ABU Zaria. It's the oldest university in northern Nigeria.
We also visited a prototype modular refinery in ABU Zaria. What's that meant to achieve in terms of the dirt in Nigeria's crude oil refining capacity?
Yes, I'm sure you will agree with me that oil, we've gone beyond prospecting. Is exploration and utilization of fossil energy in different parts of the north, including the Lake Chad, which has been confirmed, and then the Benue Trough, for instance. And we understand there are other parts of the north that I think the engineers and the geologists are about confirming the extent of commercialization of those resources in those places. Why should the scientists not prepare themselves? Do you want to wait until it's, you are responding in the last moment when it would have been crisis? Of course, modular refineries in the south-south is understandable. But of course, we're expecting commercial production of oil. The processes have started, and it will not be long from now. So I think the relevant engineers should prepare themselves. We shouldn't be doing last-minute response to our challenges. That's my...
Yes, of course. We couldn't help but to observe that there are various levels of completions of some of the physical Tetfund projects in some schools. What are your plans to get them to full completion?
Yeah, well, it takes protocol. Even in your own personal house, if you want to build, it depends on the resources that you have. But for public institutions, there are protocols. We pride ourselves at Tetfund for having absolutely near non-existent, if they exist at all, minimal, uncompleted or abandoned projects. They are uncompleted, yes, they are in the process. And institutions that do not live up to our protocols of execution of projects, we have a way of sanctioning them where we have to. It has happened a number of times. Yes, we have a way of sanctioning them if we have to apply the sanctions. And besides that, I would say, well, as far as I'm concerned, definitely every year we approve new projects, new physical projects. Even some of the research infrastructure or even a research grant, it has some component of physical infrastructure. You cannot undertake research, for instance, in the biological sciences without, in most cases, laboratories. Am I right? So you have to build the laboratory, or if it exists, the empty building, you must equip it with state-of-the-art, the latest digital equipment, as it were. So they are ongoing. The fact that you see some project completed, some 90%, 80%, every day in the office, these reports come to me. I see it, and where I need to ask some questions, if I take a look at when was this approved, and so on and so forth. We had cause to communicate the institutions and tell them to fast track. So the fact that there are projects at various stages is a confirmation that our interventions are continuous.
Let's talk about the Niger Delta University, where the Vice Chancellor believes that education without Tetfund would have been misplaced.
I'll tell you something. On a serious note, believe me, the VC of Niger Delta University, it's one of the most focused Vice Chancellors that one has met out there. And I demonstrate respect for his focus and his achievements. Where I was in the Niger Delta, I would say unofficially, not long ago, and he personally invited me to his university. And I was very impressed with not just the numbers, but the quality of the infrastructure in that university. You go to his office, go to the admin building, go around when faculties, schools, departments, and you know that, I mean, the leadership in the university knows what it's doing. And I have a lot of respect. And they are the types of some of the heads of institutions that where they need additional support, we will not hesitate where we have the resources to say if a particular intervention would go around 4 institutions and there are 40 institutions. You come, you have to prioritize. The ones that have not been performing well, I don't think you would want to put your money there. The person that is doing well and there is evidence, you'd want to encourage that kind of person. The VC of Niger Delta has earned the respect of most of, not just myself, but when officials of Tetfund have visited that university.
Alvan Ikoku in the East is another interesting institution we visited to assess Tetfund's projects there. What's the rationale driving infrastructure development there?
I'll tell you something before I speak about Alvan Ikoku. I don't know, you may not know, but I was once chairman governing council of Federal Polytechnics, Nekede Owerri, some years back. So the Owerri environment, Imo environment, I'm pretty familiar. I can confirm this to you. Talking about Alvan Ikoku, even when I was chairman governing council and subsequently some years after I became executive secretary, I visited on a commissioning visit the Minister of State for Education from Imo State at that time, led us. And I remember we went and we made comparisons between what we saw at IMSU, Imo State University, just some few kilometers away from there. And then the next we went to Alvan Ikoku, Federal College of Education. And the 2 things that did strike me. One, I noticed that at that time, I could almost bet that they had the highest number of PhD holders as lecturers in the College of Education community. I noticed that. And when I said, I noticed from even the what do you call it, the profile of the staff, I mentioned that and he said, yeah, wait, I don't think any College of Education beats us to that. That was very encouraging for me. And but again, the second thing that I was impressed was that believe me, they were delivering quality projects. Yes, quality projects compared to the institution we had visited previously. I mean, you would appreciate that. And for me, from Tetfund, I respect an institution, particularly its leadership, when I see that they are delivering not just by numbers, but by quality, the infrastructure of Tetfund, based on the funds that we release to them. So there's no way I could forget Alvan Ikoku.
Why does Tetfund feel the need to delve into security as it did with Unilag? Don't you think people will see that this is overstepping your terms of reference, your mandate?
You will agree with me that there are exceptional interventions that we have approved for many of our beneficiary institutions, universities, Polytechnic, College of Education. We've had to, initially we were not involved in fencing. More recently, we've had to admit that because of the insecurity, fencing became a top priority for a number of institutions. When they are physically vulnerable to all sorts of miscreants and criminals, we need to protect them. That is just one aspect. But of course, what they call it, UNILAC, is by the seaside there. And we want to develop a technology that is relevant to the immediate community. That is the essence. For me, when I talk about deepening research, I said for problem solving for nations. That is what traditionally universities do. University must be relevant. In fact, we want to see, when we say you are fantastic in technology, let's see the technology manifesting even within the walls, physical walls of the university, Polytechnic, or College of Education. Then the immediate community, the state, the nation, the continent, and so on and so forth. So each institution carefully identifies what is relevant for itself. Just like when I spoke earlier about, your ABU that, there are so many of those disciplines that you need ABU would pride itself. I mean, engineering, architecture, veterinary medicine, the agri complex, as we call it. Of course, medicine itself overall. And then not to talk about what? The FAS. So, and a number of aspects, you remember the mock OAU summit. We had the moot court, those for law, and so on and so forth. So a university carefully picks its priorities. Yes, UNILAG is doing very well. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, one of the very best of universities you can imagine in Nigeria and indeed in Africa. There's no doubt about it. It's globally rated one of the top most. There's no doubt about it. In a number of times, in fact, it has even come top in some other platforms of rating in Nigerian university system. So it's not a surprise that you virtually have admiration for what Professor Toyin Ogundipe is doing at UNILAG. I think they are putting up a new Senate building, if I'm not mistaken, and then I think there's facility for the College of Medicine. Those are about the three priority areas that they are applying the 5 billion. And we're happy to do that, going around and the institution picking their priorities to make the learning environment more conducive. And so challenge the faculty members, challenge everybody to do what is right. But for me, guess what? Deepening research. That is my chorus. I was at the University of Loughborough in the UK just a few days ago. And only for me to discover that Sebastian Coe might have been a motivation for them to move in and invest on sports. Not just in the physiology of sports, but in all aspects, including administration of sports. And the engineering, Loughborough is one of the strongest, world rated in engineering and entrepreneurship. And the entrepreneurship is a major area of weakness, between our universities and even the polytechnics, very sadly. And we just had a meeting recently with the executive secretary of NBTE, Professor Bugaje, making fantastic recommendations in terms of how we'd help the polytechnics to be more relevant in the context of, entrepreneurship, yes, and spin-offs, right, emerging from the relevant technology within the beneficiary institution. So these are some of the things. So for UNILAG, once we are convinced it is a priority for them, why not? We will support it. The tallest educational building in Lagos State is Yaba. It's at Yaba, and it's a Tetfund building. It's the tallest. And it's not a surprise. You go to LASU now. There's a project ongoing coming up. When it is completed, my oh my, you better imagine. So it is some of those things that encourage us. And let me add this. We've had commendations, comments, and reviews and positive references about Tetfund intervention. And a number of people visiting, including governors. Believe me, governors of the ruling party and even the opposition. Honestly, they have come to Tetfund to commend us for what we are doing. And I tell you one thing, the most passionate aspect of my priority, like I said earlier, I'll repeat it, and even if I'm over repeating it, R&D. Deepening research through R&D, research and development, institutionalizing it for Nigeria's knowledge economy in the 21st century. The most competitive nations are the ones that have the most competitive investment indices in research and development, R&D. Check it out there. The percentage of funds totally committed to R&D as relative to GDP size of that country is one of the main indices used, and it reflects also on the competitive rating of, check it out, the correlation, statistical correlation is there between those three parameters, the investment, the percentage, as it were, and the competitiveness. So it's very important. Nigeria cannot be different, and that's what we're doing now. And we are engaging, we're promoting partnership with other centers of the world. We just returned from Egypt. We've been to Rwanda. We're in Kigali, the university there. Centers of excellence in very many relevant areas, including a center of excellence in Rwanda on what? Data science. I was thrilled to find out their concept of data science, and it makes sense. It makes sense. Well, here we will just speak about statistics, but the university should be talking about data science in more profound and wider, deeper inquest approach that gives you, because as a developer, if you're a consultant in development, the first thing you want to check is what are the existing data and indices about a parameter that you want to evaluate. If they do not add up or they don't exist at all, which in many cases in our country, very embarrassingly in many sectors, the data virtually hardly exist. And if they exist, they are not reliable. We have no option but to get it right. We have to generate data, and you generate data mainly through research. Today, COVID, the first reference about indices of COVID across the world is Johns Hopkins University. You will agree with me. It's research that leads them to generate those data. We have examples to see across the world. Tetfund, through our R&D, we're able to intervene on COVID. We provided a number of molecular labs. We are funding, and in fact, two of our Tetfund funded research grants on COVID have moved to two levels of World Health Organization recognition. One for drug, the other one on vaccine and gene sequencing. So we are moving the right direction, and we have the support of President Muhammad Buhari, and the Honorable Minister of Education, who would always chat with us and say, what are those things that you think will be important for our country? And he discusses with Mr. President, and Mr. President approves it. Those are the things that make me feel pretty good back in Tetfund, that what we are doing is being appreciated. Believe me, I tell you one thing. The molecular lab also in ATBU Teaching Hospital, it's one of the most vibrant. It is effective and operational as both research and clinical facility. And that's exactly the kind of thing we are talking about. And we cannot wait to see us making, you know, in ABU, we had a number of breakthroughs in medicine, the same thing in Unijos, Federal University, Minna, of course, UI, we can go on and on, name the universities. And there we just like we also have a number of private universities now in our country that, believe me, are increasingly, almost every day, overtaking the public universities in terms of research. And that is very encouraging. At the Abuad, Adoikiti, they made a breakthrough with a drug against COVID. And it's a breakthrough, and the research goes on with more discoveries until our tertiary institutions are relevant, until we support and we are successful in problem-solving research. We are completely irrelevant. That is unacceptable with the huge funds that government has been committing to our tertiary institutions. We want to make, it's a knowledge economy in the 21st century. That's what it is called. It is defined and perfected and improved through the deepening of research, relevant research, problem-solving research.
You know, Prof, University of Maiduguri easily comes to mind with its research centers. Tell us more of Tetfund's efforts in UNIMAID.
You see, University of Maiduguri has a number of, look at some of their research institutes, the Biotechnology and the Arizona Research Center, for instance, created by former Vice Chancellor, Emeritus Professor Gadzama. And this is a university that we still have a Professor Umaru Shehu, a former Vice Chancellor there too, that is refused to rest. He has crossed 90s, but up to a few years ago, he was supervising PhD. My God, it's unbelievable. Medicine, Umaru Shehu, one of the most respected professors of medicine Nigeria has ever produced. I mean, we can go on and on. So there are best practices. There are flashy, exciting success stories about some of these institutions. We pick them one by one. We can go around this country. Of course, UNN, what do you call it? Nnamdi Azikiwe, University of Oka, University of Uyo, I mentioned earlier, University of Benin. There are a lot of fantastic things going on there. We are just hoping, and we have been trying to, what do you call it? Collate and coordinate and ensure that we let people know that great things are happening and things are increasingly changing to make our universities more relevant, so that we are not just there for Dogon Turanchi, as some people would want to say, that too much grammar from the universities. We the same thing with Polytechnics. They are being challenged to say, look, you cannot be operating as if you are university. You are Polytechnic, so we want to see more of application of your knowledge manifesting in terms of entrepreneurship, startups, etc., etc. The College of Education, they are expected to assist in facilitating the improvement in respect of curriculum development, pedagogy skills, technology base, and otherwise. These are some of the things that we have tried to do to ensure that Tetfund, our intervention, is in the right direction and that it has impact, that if there's global ranking, we are seeing tertiary institutions improving and that we're earning respectability now increasingly. But the other regulatory aspect being conducted, for instance, by universities, for universities by NUC, Polytechnic by NBTE, College of Education by NCCE, are helping to stabilize and improve the integrity associated with the tertiary institution. These are the things that make me more distinct. And let me say this, I use this opportunity to appreciate the Board of Trustees of Tetfund that has always endorsed the recommendation that I brought in terms of putting more money. There was a time that the two types of research grants in Tetfund, we have the IBR, institution-based research, with a ceiling of 2 million naira. Then the bigger one, which is managed by the beneficiary institution, they manage it there. Then the one we manage centrally at Tetfund, the NRF, National Research Fund, with a ceiling of up to 50 million. And you agree with me that you are talking about 80,000 US dollars. And with it, some of the breakthrough that we're having in medicine and so on, and they are mainly from the National Research Fund of Tetfund. For 8 years, up to the year 2019, 4 billion was kept aside as seed money. But from 2019, I made a case to the Board of Trustees, they approved, and we now made it an annual allocation. Every year we put new money. It became 5 billion for the year 2019 alone. It was raised, the Board of Trustees recommended to the minister to the president, and Mr. President approved. It was raised to 7.5 billion. Last year, it was 8.5 billion, further raised. We are hoping that it may not be less than 10 billion this time around. And we are increasing, we are challenging the faculty members, the researchers, to raise their appetite in writing grants, not just for Tetfund, but that if we are improving their skills in grant writing, by the way, they have some training, both locally and overseas, for that purpose, so that they can access grants from many global grant awarding platforms. And that will contribute in even reducing frustration of faculty members, the lecturers. I tell you one thing, once a senior academic has a research grant, You can fund the project of someone at a bachelor's level, master level, and PhD, and even postdoc, depending on how the grant is fashioned. And so that helps the lecturer as well as students to reduce their challenge of funding their research. I would rather, how many PhD candidates have we supported? How many have graduated? I think then it helps us because the ranking of universities is also premised on, for instance, the number of lecturers that have PhDs. In around 2012, 2013, it was 40%. It moved to 60% 2015. Now it is between 75 to 99, 100% in many of the institutions. There is significant improvement. And to me, that has helped in the rating, ranking, and respectability of our tertiary institutions. And I'm happy to inform you, by the way, that the 2% education tax from this year now, it is 2.5%. We are hoping that if the funding is sustained, we will emphasize those things. For instance, we have some major glaring challenges. We have the challenge of hostels. It's a begging issue. Believe me, far less than 1/3. We are talking about between 10 to 15% of students that are in hostels. That is not very good. We are hoping that if there is added funding, we will look at the issue of providing hostels. We should be aiming at accommodating not less than 3/4 of our students. Anything between 75 to 90, why not 100%? If you do that, one, you guarantee the safety of the students, but more importantly, their convenience for them to come out and go for lectures. And in any case, if you want to attract international students at bachelor's degree and postgraduate level, you need to provide hostels because they go to other parts of the world. They see hostels that are conducive with facilities comparable with those of hotels. And that is one area that we're looking at. We want to improve on ICT facilities to make sure that we're catching up with the rest of the world in terms of ICT technology facilitating teaching, communication, and research. That is very, very important. And of course, we want to secure the campuses granted the insecurity in our country, whether it is fencing or other gadgets that will be used to track miscreants. These are some of the areas, but I tell you, we're not missing the fact that we would want to continue increasing the funding for research because it helps in reducing frustration among faculty members, the lecturers. Believe me, if they are engaged and they discover there is money and they are good enough to what you call it, access those research grants, they take on many students. It reduces poverty of both the lecturer and the student. Let me jokingly put it that way. And then you are adding value with outcome of the research that is solving problem of the university, of the community, of the nation, and the world.
How would you describe the standards of education in the country between 2015 and now?
Precisely why the ETF had to come on board and the Tetfund. Yes, standard, it's been agreed for quite a while that compared to immediate post-colonial days, that the post-colonial tertiary institutions, the universities, for instance, were comparable with the very best anywhere in the world. But that with inadequate funding being a major challenge, the standards went down. There is attitudinal aspect, there is the integrity aspect, there is the aspect of corrupt practices. So it's a number of issues that are playing out that have significantly contributed in lowering standards. I admit, honestly speaking, that overall there have been lowered standards more recently, particularly in the last 1, 2 to get into 3 decades. And that's why it's being reversed with a number of interventions. The regulatory agencies are playing their role. Plagiarism, incidentally, we're now digitizing thesis. We started this project. That time we're putting money to digitize thesis, bachelor's degree, but we're starting with postgraduate, master's, PhD. The hard copy thesis that you kept in your university many years ago, you may one day just discover you need to just press a soft button and behold, your thesis is before you on your laptop. or even your handset. That's the kind of thing we are doing to catch up with the rest of the world. So we will continue to do that. Some of those things, it also helps in tracking plagiarism, which is, of course, a corrupt practice. It's unacceptable. Whatever we need to do to contribute our part from Tetfund, to support the regulatory agencies, NUC, NBT, NCCE, to ensure that this do not happen, we will continue to do it.
What would you say to the pessimists?
They are entitled to their opinion. But the problem with the pessimists is that when facts are rolled out, they are the losing end. With the approval of the Honorable Minister of Education, Mala Adamu, we proceeded to provide special grants, and we call them mega research grants. They are grants from clusters, 4 clusters. And I can proceed with the details quickly. The one is on vaccine production. And with we want to revive the vaccine production infrastructure and the National Veterinary Research Institute, VOM. The NVRI VOM, as we call it, is actually leading. There are about four other partners. One of them is the National Institute for Medical Research, NIMR Yaba Lagos. And they are working on gene sequencing as an important partner in that process. The university, Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto, they are essentially leading the candidate vaccine for COVID. And we have the veterinary faculty of the University of Jos that is to provide the animals for the trials at the advanced stage and the final stages after the vaccines would have been confirmed as relevant and effective against COVID. Then we have the National Institute for Chemical Technology, Zaria. Those are the 4 institutions working with NVRI VOM as the team leader, and it's towards vaccine. The second one is on drugs, and the emphasis is on phyto drugs. Yes, and NIPRIT, IDU, you would appreciate, is leading that one. National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, IDU. And you know their mandate, it's very clear. And they are working in partnership with FRIN, Forestry Research Institute, Ibadan. And these are research institutes that have earned their names. They have a number of products out there, a number of drugs, and as it were, that are well known. In fact, they have gone far in the process, and very soon they will be communicating. And the third partner working with NIPRIT is the Pharmaceutical Council, right? It's a regulator, of course. They are working with them. Those are the 3. Then the third one is the Dairy Research and Development Center in ATBU, my own university, where I occupy the chair. Right. The Dairy Research and Development Center, we gave them a special grant to reinforce and expand their research production as well as product development and byproducts technology trust in that place. And I'm sure it appears you visited that place and you know that there are plans to make it a world center of excellence. You can go on and on. That's precisely what we're doing. As I'm talking to you now, I think there are crossings going on, but the indigenous high milk yielding varieties are being developed with interventions to enhance their production. That it's not issue of 1.5 to 2 liters per day. For God's sake, we should be talking of up to 10 or even more than that, 10 to 15. Why not even near 20 liters per each of those this thing. Then the last one is the DICON, Defense Industry Corporation, Kaduna. That is defense. So you can see here we have agri sector, we have medicine and drugs, vaccine, and then we have defense. DICON has been doing great things. And believe me, it took us visiting to see what they are doing. All that we are doing, in fact, and let me say this to the credit of the military constituency in our country. Believe me, they are very cooperative They are very excited. We're working together with them on R&D for the military. Some in respect of kinetic, others non-kinetic technologies, deterrent, as you want to call it. We have a number of technologies out there for, addressing issue of mines out there in the field, which you know that the terrorists have been using in our country. Some of those technologies that the kidnappers are also using. We are working with security agencies, the military, as well as the non-military subsectors. And it is this kind of partnership that we are deliberately, we sought the approval of Mr. President, and after the board accepted it, the Honorable Minister was happy to endorse it, and Mr. President approved. So 4 clusters are emerging, addressing key areas. You go to DICON, there are a number of technologies that have emerged. The UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, of course, AFID Kaduna there, and so on and so forth. We are hoping to continue to work with them. To me, if the researcher is not relevant, addressing technology, addressing economy, and addressing governance. That is why we have a Center for Governance and Leadership at the University of, a Center of Excellence of Tetfund. We're looking at the holistic. So the R&D is not just about one sector. It's the totality of Nigeria. Let us be relevant. In the civilizations of the past, the thinkers shaped nations. We cannot be different. It's still happening in other parts of the world. We have to remind our thinkers, remind our researchers that they must do those things to improve the technology, the economy, governance, and totality of our nation. If we do that and we get it right, I can tell you Nigeria will be competitive in all spheres. And that is our vision and desire for our nation.
Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, the Executive Secretary of Tetfund, we sincerely thank you for sparing our time to talk to us here on Control TV.
Thank you, Gimba.
And we do wish you well in all your endeavors. Thank you so much indeed.